Please welcome on stage Gerry Bassermann.
Oh, hello. Hello. Hey, everyone. Yeah, that's me, product specialist, Sequential Oberheim, May 2023. Very happy to bring you yet more instruments, more new instruments. Last year we were here with the Oberheim OB-X8, and we filled the sound of the theater with its beautiful sound. Well, now we have a junior partner for the keyboard, which is rather large, paneled, and this is the desktop module. So let me just advance move into our power presentation here and give you a little history. Dave Smith's history began in 1974 with the beginning of sequential circuits. You know, Dave was an electrical engineer working at Lockheed or aircraft, someplace electrical engineers go to work. And then he stumbled across a mini Moog back then, and once he took it home, he knew he had to change his life, quit his job, and start to make synthesizers. This is a story told often of people who stumbled across mini Moogs back then in the day. So Dave dedicated his life, and he had a hit keyboard right away. He was clever enough to figure out how to have the synthesizer memorize the settings, so we call that programmable synth, and they remain in memory until you press a button and they all come back. Before that, you had to turn every knob until you came to the same sound you thought as before. So he had that. Also, polyphony, playing more note than one note at a time. The Prophet 5 that he invented was 5-voice. So you have a bass note and a 4-note chord. So that had never happened before, and he instantly had a hit on his hands, the Prophet 5. Lasted a certain amount of time. Sequential produced other products, but like all American companies, they all eventually went out of business. Synthesizer business was risky business. And whether it was Moog or ARP or Sequential or Oberheim, they all had to sell eventually because they couldn't sell enough of their units. Eventually, some of them, the name came back to them, and they were lucky enough to produce again. And that happened to Dave Smith in 2008. When all of a sudden Yamaha gave him his name, Sequential Circuits, back, and the name Prophet, so that he could again begin to make instruments with those names. And the same thing very recently with Tom Oberheim happened. He got his name back from the Gibson Corporation and Behringer here in Germany to say you can do business under your own name. And it's a very sweet industry we have here where that can happen free and clear, a legal letter, and that was all it took. So we're really happy about that, and Dave was exceedingly happy in 2015 when that happened to him, and he renamed the company from Dave Smith Instruments back to Sequential. So that's kind of the story on that slide there. It shows him holding a Grammy, as you can see right up there. I mean, he got the Grammy because he and Mr. Kakahashi from Roland invented the MIDI spec back in the day and decided to give it free to everyone in the music industry, and we know how much in the keyboards industry and the synthesizer industry that has helped and made lots of companies money, and Dave just gave it away. So kind of guy he was. We lost him last June, and we miss him dearly, but the company is in very good shape. And in fact, we have Dave's last instrument up here with us on stage where he completed the sound part. And the design team, well trained for 10 years under him, finished the rest of the instrument, and they will be continuing his work on from now on. So, exciting future ahead. All right, what's new at Oberheim? Today we're going to talk about this module, the Take 5, that little keyboard we have with 44 full-sized keys. Sounds incredible. That has a 2.0 firmware release. I'll just talk about that. I don't have it. And then Trigon 6 we'll spend the most time on because it's an incredible instrument, and we want you to hear it, what it sounds like. So yeah, here's the most recent things in reverse chronology. Trigon 6 came out the beginning of this year, and last year at this time, OBX8 came out, and a year before that, Take 5 came out. So that's sort of the storyline. I want to play a little bit of this for you, but I'm not going to spend too much time because we used the whole session last year to play the keyboard, and it's exactly the same. The patches are exactly the same. I don't know if you can see how well you see it from in the camera, but it's only 9 pounds, and the functionality is exactly the same. Obviously, the panel is smaller, much smaller than the keyboard, but you know, it's got rugged, pretty big switches and knobs. I mean, compared to a lot of Eurorack stuff, it's still, you can get your meaty paws around it and handle it really easily. So everything is there that is on the keyboard, except, of course, for the performance wheels, the paddles, they're called, and those other elements that are to the left of the keyboard. So we're happy. This is going to ship next month. It's going to cost, in the US, $3,500. And so it's quite a different price, lower than the keyboard, which is $5,000, because of all the metal and wood and things that you don't need on this one. So anyway, let's see if we can get some sound out of here. And the reason it sounds like I'm playing a couple of different patches is because these key beds are so beautiful. The Fatar key beds, which the Oberheim keyboard has, and also the Trigon, I can just make stabs with my velocity very fast, and I can also just here. There's a little pressure aftertouch happening, so I get a little LFO out of that. There, eh? You don't hear any reverb. There is no reverb on there. There was no reverb on OBX or the OBX8 or the OB8. And we went into this thinking we were making a legacy instrument. We're going to make it almost exactly the way it was in 1979 to 1983. So the only things added are the USB and the fact that it receives aftertouch and velocity that wasn't possible at the time. Other than that, everything is exactly the same. So we have been showing this the whole show. Again, it's been anticipated that would arrive, but we just announced it on Tuesday. So it's the new news that we have. So we're really happy it's going to ship next month, and it'll be somewhat affordable to buy. So that's the story of the Oberheim OB-X8 Desktop module. And at the end, I'll bring it back, because I thought to myself, why not play them both at once? Because we have such a big room, and no matter how loud I play, you'll all be safe. So it'll be good. All right, so let me turn that down and talk a little bit about the Take 5, because that's our next news. The Take 5 has now 128 extra presets. That's basically double the memory for your presets, or such as we have wonderful presets from Geosynths, and there's many other soundware manufacturers who do sounds for these wonderful instruments. And so you can stick a whole bank, hundreds of sounds in there now that you have the room with the 2.0 Take 5. So that's pretty exciting, or your own concoctions, whatever you want to do. Plus there's lots and lots. There's a new effect. There's lots and lots of features, such as the taking oscillator 2 and not assigning it to the filter while the other oscillator goes to the filter. Little sound design things that when you're making up sounds makes it sound much more interesting, or you have many more types of sounds that you can make. Looping envelopes, so you can have the rhythms within each patch where the envelope doesn't just play itself out, but it repeats, it goes back. And so if you have the different sections doing these things, like a mini sequencer per voice. And so that's pretty exciting. Lots and lots. It's a great firmware update, and that's available right now. It's in all the new instruments, and anybody who owns a Take 5, you can just go to the site, download it for free, and it's yours. So that's also big news. And finally, the Trigon 6. This is the new baby. This is the one that Dave finished the voice. The voice in a synthesizer is basically how which oscillators are there, how many, how do they work in the signal path, what are the various features you give them, the waveforms, etc. And also, how does that move into the filter, what kind of filter it is. All those are the crucial questions about how an instrument sounds. And Dave had a vision, a year and a half or a year ago, that he wanted to make a synthesizer instead of 2 oscillators, which is the norm in analog subtractive synthesis, with 3 oscillators per voice. So since it's a 6-voice instrument, that means you have 18 oscillators here. And when you gang those up all on one note or one chord, it's a very, very big sound. So he thought that would be exciting to do. And then also to follow that with what's called a ladder filter. This is designed, originally invented by Bob Moog, but others have taken their try at a ladder filter. It's basically looking like this, which is why it's called a ladder filter, because it looks like a ladder when Bob wrote it out. But this has some differences, because it's Dave Smith's ladder filter. And not only did he make it his own, we have it on the Pro 3 as well, as another place it shows itself. But also, it's an enhanced ladder filter, because you'll see that before these oscillators and the mixer moves to the filter section, you can either overdrive that signal and hit the filter harder, or you can use an effect called feedback, a first time for us in any of our instruments. Back in the day, when you had outputs and inputs for audio, some users would take a cable, plug it in the output, put it in the input, and create a loop, a little loop that wasn't designed into the instrument, but it made it fat and kind of girthy, well-fed signal, and then it would pass it on to the filter. So it has a very interesting sort of sound. I'll actually just now, I got to make sure that I'm on. Let's turn it up. Okay, so that's basically what we call basic program. All that's said is one sawtooth wave, and everything else is sort of at default, right? So if I just take that one sawtooth wave and I apply this feedback, hopefully you can start to get fatter. It's not distortion, it's feedback. Pretty soon, sub-octaves. Yeah, it gets kind of hairier and hairier. The designers made sure it would go to 11 so that you could go a little bit beyond what you thought was reasonable, because why stop at 10? So anyway, you can mix that into lots of sounds. You can be subtle with it too. I don't choose to be, but many do, and their presets are wonderful. So, but we've never had that before. It's very different than distortion, you know? Yeah. That's all from how you drive it into the filter. So that's the enhanced ladder filter effect. So that's what basically happens. And after that, it follows a design that actually is in two of our other instruments. Prophet 6, designed in 2015 to be a sort of celebration of Dave when he got his name back, Sequential. And the OB-6, his first association with Tom Oberheim. They created a synth together. And they're all in this 4-octave format, full-size FITAR keybeds. And the FITAR keybeds that we have in all the instruments are really a godsend because they let you be so expressive. All of them have oscillators, filters, one global LFO, 2 digital effects at the very end of the chain, an arpeggiator and a sequencer, and they all have this sort of 4-octave package, which is, you know, not the normal 5-octave thing that's pretty large, but able to be fit in any studio and easily slings under the hand or arm or in a gig bag, and turned out to be very popular. The Prophet 6 still sells bundles, and it was introduced, what, 7, 8 years ago. So now that's like a power trio. I think I have a picture of the trio. And there's the Trigon now. And to be honest, it has a bit more than them. It has more of everything. It has more destinations for the LFO. It has more polymod that you can do modulation in every sort of way. More aftertouch, more than that. So they're all brothers, sisters, siblings, but the latest one sort of has the most stuff, you know? This design is known as knob per function. There's no display. You can see maybe just there's no real display. I would get hung up into it. What's happening? Why isn't it happening? It's all knobs do everything. And every time you turn a knob, it does something. So you can get lost in your travels of making sound and being guided by your ears. Dave loved that sort of. Didn't like displays so much. He didn't like music made on computers. He really, really liked an instrument that had a lot of tactile things, and that's exactly what this has and what they, in fact, all have. Also, the design inside, if we could look inside of it, discrete components. It's not done very often today. It's not an inexpensive way to make a synthesizer, but they're all discrete components on circuit boards that are, in a sense, handmade. So that's what makes them, I think, sound so good. So I don't know what we got here. It's 3:40. Only half the time is gone. Let's just start playing sounds, see what this thing can do in this room. I'm just going to take the number 1 patch, play some chords. It's big and hefty. The three oscillator thing, I mean, this is 2 sawtooth waves, and on the bottom it's also a sawtooth wave, and you have an option of a reverse sawtooth. There's also triangle waves and pulse widths that you can change the pulse width duty cycle. There's also hard sync, oscillator sync. I haven't done anything with a filter yet, right? But you get all these options just within the oscillator department. You can have an LFO modulate that. And you can just turn them all on. It's a new system of switching that we have. You can just turn the switches for combine the oscillators at will, and you'll be changing the waveforms and changing the octaves. We have these nice octave switchers on every one, very easy. And the third octave can be actually either a normal audio oscillator or put it in low mode, and it becomes a low frequency oscillator per voice. So we have two different, a global LFO and an LFO you can use per voice, which is nice because as you play, you start each one separately, so the vibrato or the tremolo will start a little differently and sound more like an ensemble of people playing, which is often exactly what you want. You can also turn on unison for a sound like this. I'm going to actually turn off those. I started pushing buttons like crazy, like a madman, and that's not advised in the manual. It says just try to stay inside yourself. You know. Okay, so let's. I'm going to hit unison, which means it's going to act like a only one note at a time, right? But how many actually oscillators is on that? Well, it tells me here only one voice is being used. So 3 oscillators are on that. So let's play the note and increase the number. That's 1, 2 voice, 3 voice, 4 voice, 5 voice. All 6 voices equaling 18 oscillators. So a mammoth sound with all the force going down to that one big bad note. That's a room you don't want to step in if you're watching a movie. You just go the other way. So let's play with the filter a little bit. Let's play with that ladder filter. Take all these oscillators. One thing I'm going to do too is turn up the vintage knob, which the vintage knob is, when it's all the way left, it's like, hey, 2023, everything's firing, all the soldiers are standing at attention, they're in tune, they're dressed nice, nothing wrong with the sound at all. But if you want to travel back in time, what did a vintage instrument sound like? Things didn't happen always on time. The envelope stages were a little sloppy, they're a little slow to react, getting later at night, as it were. So let's just play. All those voices in there are out of tune. They have different envelope shapes slightly, right? As if they're old and dusty. But if anything, the sound has gotten bigger because of those little different, how can it get bigger? But it did. It got bigger. So we did that. We turned up vintage. Now we're going to resonance now. This is the ladder filter. Now it's going up above our ability to hear it, right? So I'm going to play you a preset later as well where all you hear is the filter, because this filter can self-resonate, making a kind of other oscillator, a fourth. It would be a very high sine wave. And, well, I'm talking about it now. Why don't we just get to it? This one. If you look on the picture, maybe those of ties, you'll notice none of the buttons here, none of them are on, right? That means there's no oscillators on, so we shouldn't be able to hear anything, but we are because this filter is up, the resonance is up all the way. I can change that with the cutoff filter. And the filter also has two modes, 4-pole and 2-pole. So 2-pole lets more through. 4-pole, the original Moog filter, right, covers things up. Anyway, that's a remarkable attribute of the ladder filter that not every filter can do, and this can do it in 2-pole and 4-pole mode. So you've heard a lot of, I opened with the large thing, right? This is large and it's going to get larger. But obviously that's not all it can do. It can do, like, I'm not a big, large kind of music person. I'm kind of a noodler. So I like to do moody things. And people tell me to cheer up. And I'm like, it's okay. It's just what I do. So I made this up. I always use the sequencer. It's a 64-step sequencer that's easy to record and play back. And then you can just play over it and think up a music idea, a song or something. You can also tie the notes together like this one, so it sounds like I'm holding it down, but those steps are simply getting their ties instead of rests. So it's moving very slowly, and I can just get in there and that's moody number 1, I call it. This is delightful. I call this one delightful because it's just the one triangle wave. It's not trying to be big. It's actually trying to be intimate. Like a woodwind. So I made up a little sequence. Springtime. The birds are clapping. That's fantastic. Okay, now I'm going to turn on the effects bus, and it just really spreads out the candy, the magic dust. I can also transpose it at will. Little up a minor third thing. Play with it like that. So the sequencer is a very, very, very nice thing to have on board. You don't have to connect anything, or where's my signal, or why doesn't it this? You just hit record, start putting some notes in. Very simple thing to do. So. get the idea. Thank you. I think we're probably there. Yeah, it's very flexible, a lot of moods, not just one thing. It's beautiful. There's a historical tale about a mythical instrument called the memory moog. Was never mythical, but it had its problems in the world working all the time. And in a sense, this is an homage to that instrument because it was 3 oscillators and ladder filter as well. And we built this to last and for a lot of people doing a lot of different things with it. So hopefully it has a somewhat different fate. But anyway, if anyone has any questions about the line, what's else in our line, or what these instruments might have or not have, you can ask them right now. Yes. Polymode, yeah, polymode on all the instruments. I think it's not called that on the OB6, but is a way of modulating, setting a destination and a source to be able to just sending oscillator 3 amount to the filter and filter envelope. That would be the analog distortion. This is just a modulation that's driving the filter a little crazy, so it's vibrating and shimmering like that. So depending on what your controls are and what your settings are, modulation gives you that extra something, sometimes subliminal, that makes it an interesting sound. You're not sure why. And sometimes more in your face. So it's a very wide-ranging kind of modulation generator. In cross mod, the OB6 has a thing very similar that's called cross-mod. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, basically just wanted to say that our line breaks down. We always do analog, for now, we always do analog subtractive synthesis. So sometimes people are like, which one should I get? They sound good. I don't know which is ideal for me and kind of thing. Well, they're all great to get. But these three that I just showed you, the Trigon, those are our modern analog collection with the analog core and digital effects. And these are also in that group, the Rev 2, which is a little older than the others, and the Take 5. Why? Because they have a complete analog core, but they have those digital effects like this at the end of the path. If you don't use the digital effects, then you have 100% analog all the way to the output. If you turn them on, then you pass them through that. So you're not committed to the digital part at all, if that would bother you. And then the other kind of instruments we produce and offer right now, two are reissues. We call classic reissued. One is the Prophet 5, which painstakingly Dave, a number of years ago, recreated. This is a Rev 4 then, because there were 3 revisions of the original. And it's beautiful, a facsimile of the original one, sounds exactly like it, and it's a beautiful piece. We also have it in a 10-voice option, Prophet 5 and 10, same features. And then, of course, the last year's OBX8, that's a classic that was reissued with meticulous supervision by people who worked at Oberheim back in the day, and Tom himself, to make sure it adhered to the standards and was exactly like the original. You know, those old instruments are going for $15,000 to $20,000 each, and they're not even in great shape a lot of times, the OBX and OBX8 and OB8. But this now is available, has all 3 of those in it for the price of $5,000. That's a bargain on the one hand. And Prophet X, now these are called the hybrid analog, and there's 2 of them. Why is it hybrid? Because it has an analog part that's very core to it, but it has a digital component. So in the case of Prophet X, that digital technology is sampling. And there's a disc with 150 gigabytes of sounds from a company called 8DO, the people who sell sounds to the film composer community. Exceptionally high quality and sometimes strange sounds. That's in there, so alongside the oscillators, you can choose 2 sample key maps, mix them all together. It's a very different instrument, and a high quality digital stereo filter in there by Dave Rossum. So that's exciting. And then the last one is the Pro 3, which is a monophonic synth, 2 juicy oscillators that are analog, and 1 wavetable. So you can add that wavetable element to any of the sounds. And there's 3 different legacy filters in there, the Dave Smith Prophet 5 filter, Bob Moog's Dave Smith ladder filter, and also Tom Oberheim's state variable filter. So that's a very flexible, but they're hybrid because they have clearly digital technology in them. Anyway, that's our line. It's all up in the room upstairs, so if you choose to come up, and you can check them out for whatever hours we have left. Anyway, it's been my honor that you showed up and that you had us here. I really thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Gerry.
Thank you.
Yeah.